St Paul's Churchyard and also Cheapside. There are also closures around Clapham Common for the London to Brighton cycle ride. That's including Burntwood Lane and Nightingale Lane. And in Downham, Rangefield Road is closed in both directions. That's because of an accident. On the trains, Southern are not running between Clapham Junction and Watford Junction because of engineering works. And on the tubes, the District Line is suspended this weekend between Richmond and Turnham Green. LBC Travel, I'm Emily Rose.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. I hope Sunday finds you well. The National Health Service needs more money. In fact, it needs a lot more money, and we'll talk a bit about that over the course of the next hour. Question is, where is it going to come from? Now, remember back during the referendum campaign, one of the most contentious issues during the campaign, and I have to say, ever since, involved Boris Johnson and the big red coach that toured with him around the country. Here was Boris talking during that campaign.
If we vote Leave on June the 23rd, we can take back control of £350 million a week and spend on our priorities here in this country, including on the National Health Service.
Well, ever since then, Boris has been pilloried for daring to use that figure, because it was the gross figure before the rebate and before money comes back in the form of money for rich landowners, scientific grants, etc. But he's never, ever, ever, Boris, backed down from it for 1 second, but it's been used, really been used as a stick by the Remain side again and again. And yet, blow me down, in an interview with Tom Swarbrick on LBC, played earlier this morning, the Prime Minister made this pledge.
We're setting out a funding settlement for the NHS, which will be over a period of years. And by the end of 5 years, in 2023-24, the NHS will be getting £20 billion more in real terms that year than it is today. That's a lot of money. It's a significant increase in the amount of money being spent on the NHS. But this is about ensuring we can deliver world-class healthcare into the future.
Where's that money coming from?
We will be able, when we leave the European Union, to spend the money that otherwise we would have been sending to the European Union, because currently we spend significant sums of money each year to the EU. We'll be able to use that money on our priorities, and the NHS is our number one priority, and we as a country will contribute a bit more.
Do you know how much the Brexit dividend per week is going to be? Because, as you know, lots of claims have been made about how much money can go from the EU budget now into the NHS.
What I can tell you is what this extra money going into the NHS means per week. Now, of course, people may remember seeing a figure on the side of a bus, £350 million extra a week for the NHS in cash. Actually, what we're doing, what I'm announcing, means that in 2023-24, there will be around £600 million a week in cash more going into the NHS.
So the Brexiteers weren't lying? In fact, they undersold it.
We have made a conscious decision that the NHS is our priority. I think that's important because for the last 70 years it's been there, as I say, for all of us, but it's important that we make sure that it's there for the future.
When you say we as a country will have to contribute more, does that mean income tax rises?
Well, we'll be setting out, the Chancellor will set out in due course, before the spending review, he'll set out how the whole package of funding that we'll be putting. But it is right, I think, that we say to people that because the NHS is so important to us, that we do look at asking for the country to contribute more, but in a fair and balanced way. I think that's important. So yes, we take the advantage that we've got of the money we're no longer sending to the European Union, but also in putting the amount of money we want to put into the NHS for the future, I think we do have to look at contributing more.
Well, there we are. Theresa May saying there's going to be a Brexit dividend. There's going to be lots of money. Much of it will go into the National Health Service. And in doing this, the Prime Minister, I think in many ways, is using political spin very skillfully and very well. Because that's exactly the kind of thing that Leave voters want to hear. In fact, in many cases, I think they're desperate to hear something that is at least vaguely positive coming from the Prime Minister. Now, I think the truth of it is, and, we've got Conservative supporting newspapers like the Sunday Telegraph, big headline, NHS to get extra £384 million a week. The Prime Minister herself has used a figure as high as 600 million, and that's because, of course, these increases are being phased in over 5 years, so they compound up. It's clever, because what it really does is it masks very cleverly the fact that taxes will need to go up. But let's get back to talking about Brexit. And let's talk about that pledge, that £350 million a week. Is Boris Johnson now finally fully vindicated? Well, I'm going to ask the opinion of a veteran Eurosceptic. And I say that because I've only been campaigning against EU membership for a pitiful 25 years. My first guest today has been doing it for half a century. He is John Mills. He joins me this morning. John, hello.
Morning to you, Nigel.
Good morning. Now, you were a senior officer in the Vote Leave campaign when Boris was going out round the country with this 350 million figure on the side of his big red coach. Were you always confident and happy, John, with that number?
I was always a little bit queasy about that number because it was the gross figure rather than the net figure, but it was a very large sum, and we do pay a very large sum every year to the European Union, and I think it drew attention to the size of that sum very effectively. It keyed in with the NHS, which is a really major issue of concern for lots of people. So I think it was a very effective way of bringing the size of the amount of money we were paying to the European Union to everybody's attention.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear the Prime Minister even using the word vast, the vast amounts of money that we pay to Brussels. I thought it was a very big Eurosceptic pitch from Theresa May today. But, John, isn't the truth of it? And it's a great soundbite, and people will hear that this morning and say yippee. But isn't the truth of it, as the Prime Minister has signed us up to a transition period, we're effectively going to go on paying the net 10 billion a year for the next few years anyway?
Well, I think that's a big problem. I think that instead of going for a clean Brexit, which is what I would have favoured, we're going to get stuck in the single market and stuck in the customs union if we're not very careful, and it'll go on and on and on. And in the meantime, we're going to go on paying all the money to the European Union, in which case what will happen with an NHS is the increase in funding will come from tax instead of the Brexit dividend.
Yeah.
I think there's a big fight to try to avoid that happening now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these numbers, it's already going to be threepence on tax, and if we haven't, and if we increase the spending by 20 billion plus, you're right. I mean, the implications for taxation are really quite great. Looking at the big picture, and by the way, Boris, John, must be very happy this morning, but looking at the big picture, John, I mean, are you still... And you had a senior role back in the 1975 referendum, so you've been doing this longer than me, longer than almost anybody. And well done for your persistence. But do you still feel confident that at 11 o'clock on the 29th of March next year, we will leave the European Union?
Well, I think formally that may well happen, but in practice, I'm not at all sure it will. I mean, I think we had a pretty clear statement from the government about what they wanted to achieve, which I think was backed by a large proportion of the people, certainly the voters in the Labour Party, if not the MPs, that we were going to come out of the single market and the customs union. We were going to have a Canada-type deal, which I think would have satisfied most people most of the way. Now I think there's a real danger we're going to get stuck in the worst of all worlds, really, where we've got no control over what the European Union does, but our commercial policy, our economic policy is substantially controlled through the customs union and the single market. And we're in a sort of vassal state situation, the fifth or sixth largest economy in the world, with large sections of what we do being controlled by somebody outside the country.
Is there a need, John, for a new campaign?
Well, I think there may well be if we get to a stage where this happens.
Yeah.
Although I think the big problem is that we've got no majority in Parliament that's prepared to walk away from a bad deal. And this just hands all the cards to the European Union negotiators, putting us in a very difficult position. So quite how we're going to get the leverage to stop this happening, I don't think it's very clear.
No. And one final question, John. You, through your business, as I understand it, import a lot of product that is manufactured in China. That's right, isn't it?
That is correct, yes.
Now, we're being told by those who say we have to stay part of the customs union that unless you're part of it, it is a nightmare to get goods into this country from overseas. Just tell me, how does your product come into the UK and how difficult is it?
It really isn't very difficult at all. I was just gobsmacked to hear these suggestions that it was going to cost £20 billion extra to stay or to come outside the customs union. This is about 10 times what my experience is in terms of costs. I think it's more like 1% than 10%.
Yep.
And I must say, it does seem to be really wrong that we should take decisions about the future of the country based on such inaccurate information as that.
OK, John, thank you very much indeed. Well, that was John Mills, you know, he was vice chairman of the Vote Leave campaign. He says even he was slightly queasy about the £350 million figure a week. Boris was always very confident. Has Mrs May vindicated Boris today? Andrew in Halifax, what do you think?
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Well, I voted Leave, as you'll probably be aware by now, but I certainly didn't vote Leave because of any promises to do with the NHS. Mm-hmm. I think the NHS is a colossal pain in the backside in this country, quite frankly.
Do you?
I do. It's a
70th birthday. You've got no happy birthday wishes for it, Andrew?
Not a bit.
Really?
Not a bit. Nope. Because I just wonder how many more years we're going to have to plough pound after pound into health provision in this country. I mean, I think there are three principal problems with the NHS, Nigel. One is the obscene amounts of waste and overpaid senior executives.
Yep.
The second one are people abusing the health service for cosmetic and or the remedying of faux psychological issues. And thirdly, which you will completely concur with, is the appalling amounts of health tourism that we have. And, you know, we must be the only country in the world where you can live here for all of 2 minutes, pay not a penny in tax, and yet avail of every NHS provision going. It's
Andrew,
obscene.
I don't disagree with any of the 3 points you've just made, but I would say this to you. Any government that doesn't keep increasing spending on the NHS would face electoral death in this country. Andrew, I thank you for your call, your comments, your criticisms, but even Andrew hasn't quite got it. There is one reason, above all, that we need to keep increasing massively spending on the National Health Service, and nobody, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, Jeremy Corbyn, even wants to talk about it. I'm going to tell you what that is in a moment, but for now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 10:15.
This is LBC.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best-read Sunday paper, and free inside every copy this weekend, a superb Weight Watchers Flex for Summer food diary. It's the perfect way to help you follow Weight Watchers' most flexible programme ever. Packed with tasty snack ideas and top tips to keep you on track, it'll help you enjoy the food you love and still look and feel fabulous. Free Weight Watchers Flex for Summer food diary, only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
Block management. It's a doddle, isn't it? I mean, once you've got budget approval, all you need to do is your service charge invoices,
health and safety regulations paperwork, do the cleaning, the gardening, general maintenance, sort out site inspections, arrange contracts, insurance, emergency representation.
Yes, block management. Such a doddle.
Save time and money and cut down on the stress. For complete block management solutions, just call ABC Estates. ABC will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry.
For complete block management solutions, see abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
Every child in London is breathing toxic air, mainly caused by road vehicles. To help tackle this, the ultra-low emission zone is coming to central London for petrol and diesel vehicles. It will operate 24 hours a day, every day of the year, from the 8th of April 2019, in addition to the weekday congestion charge. Search ULEZ to check your vehicle meets the emission standards and to plan your options. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
What's your summer soundtrack? Lawn mowing, bee dodging, or 6-speaker touchscreen controlled DAB radio blasting. A new Corsa Energy for £150 initial rental and £150 a month. Search Corsa offers. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903.
Personal contract hire offer on Corsa 3-door Energy 1.4 75 PS in metallic paint. Initial rental £150 plus 47 months at £150. Excess miles over contracted mileage of 20,000 over 48 months charged at 9 pence per mile. Subject to availability and status. You will not own the car. 18 plus T's and C's apply. Offer ends June 30th, 2018. Vauxhall Finance Leasing.
Is your money working as hard as you do? Think about it. While you're grafting away, is your money working too? No? Then it's time to Wealthify. Wealthify is the smart, easy way to start investing. Just say how you want to invest. Cautious? Adventurous? Somewhere in between? And let Wealthify do the rest. Then keep track of your money on the app. Easy. Isn't it time for you to Wealthify? Download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
Spending on the National Health Service has to go up every single year significantly, not just because of administrative waste, not just because of health tourism, not just because of many, many factors where one can criticise the day-to-day running and management of the NHS, including, of course, Mr Blair's famous private finance initiative deals. No, the real reason is this, and nobody will talk about it, and it is the British population is rising by 500,000 people every single year, and 75% of that is because of people coming into this country and those that have come having children. 3/4 of our population growth in the last few years and now is because of open door immigration. But let's not talk about that. If you've got 500,000 people more a year needing health service provision, is it any wonder we need to increase spending? And of course, part of the argument around Brexit was that by leaving, we can take back control of our borders and significantly reduce the numbers coming into Britain. But there's little prospect of that. And as I say, it is the elephant in the room and nobody wants to talk about it because immigration has disappeared completely off the political radar in this country, which is odd when we've got a new Italian government that's been voted in on immigration, a Hungarian government now with a massive majority because of their view of immigration, and maybe, just maybe, a German chancellor who's been in position for over a decade, who may be toppled this very week on the issue of immigration. So immigration is dominating European politics, but not being discussed here. But hey, Boris went round and said there'll be a Brexit dividend. Up to £350 million a week could be poured into the NHS, and he's been backed up by the Prime Minister this morning. Maybe she's, I don't know, supporting him as her successor, but he will certainly be enjoying his eggs and bacon this morning, thinking, wow, I've been fully legitimised. And I want to know from you, do you think this does legitimise everything Boris stood for? And if you do, call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think Boris has really just got lucky here, in which case you can text to 84850. Or maybe you think, actually, this is all spin, it's not real. If we have a transition period, there is no net saving because we've promised up to 39 billion as a leaving fee. That leaving fee in many ways is continued membership, most of it for 2 or 3 years. And if that's how you feel, if you think it's a cynical attempt to cover up significant tax rises, which it may well be, then please, you can tweet your views using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And so far, there are 1 or 2 cynics out there, I see. Hi, Nige. How can anyone believe a word of what Mrs May says? What total rubbish, says Kez in Dorset. Let's go to a first-time caller from Broadstairs in Kent. It's Al. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. Welcome to the show.
South Barrett.
Yes, and still a rather contested. We can't say too much legally about it, but still 1 or 2 reverberations from the last election there. Now, Al, here we are. Were you a Brexit voter, Al?
Yes.
You were.
Very much so.
So are you pleased about all this money from the Brexit dividend?
I'm a little bit sceptical, but what I think is that this announcement that the Prime Minister has made today is in preparation for the possibility, and I think it's a high possibility, of a no-deal exit next year.
Wow. OK, and is that because of Monsieur Barnier's total intransigence making it...
He's not moving at all, is he?
Actually, no, he is. He's making it harder. He's twisting the Northern Ireland ratchet as much as he possibly can.
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, I have to say that, I helped coin the phrase with a group of economists in the referendum campaign of no deal is better than a bad deal, Alan. I still very much believe that. even if it did cause some, short-term disruption. I think a bad deal that, as John Mills, who was on earlier, said, could wrap us up for years in the worst of all worlds. But do you think, given the muscle flexing hour we've seen this week from Dominic Grieve and Anna Soubry and all these sort of people, do you think Parliament would allow the Prime Minister to get away with a no deal?
I think that's something that is a possibility, and I think this is what she's foreseeing. I think she's trying to set the scene for a showdown.
So whatever bad news is to come, money's going to the NHS. Be happy, everybody.
Yeah,
it's quite clever. Actually, tell you what, forget the facts and the figures and the numbers. It's quite clever spin, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I sort of thought to myself this morning, there'll be people rushing to get their kids off to football training or whatever, and they haven't got much time for the news or the newspapers. They'll hear the headlines and they'll think, oh, this is really good. Al, thank you for your call. And Al thinks she's getting the good news in first because there are tougher times just around the corner. Have I heard Mrs May's latest manipulative statement correctly? What is the year the NHS is to commence receiving this investment, 23-24, bearing in mind that we're now in 2018? How many elections between now and 2023? Well, she certainly won't be there in 2023. That I can be pretty certain of. Don't trust her. Don't believe her, says Caroline from Hants. You really are a very, very cynical old lot, aren't you? This wonderful news. The Prime Minister's just given you this huge Brexit dividend money for the NHS. I can't understand what's wrong with you. David is calling from Bracknell. Good morning, David.
Oh, good morning to you, Nigel. Yeah, there's one other reason, actually, which nobody ever appears to talk about. I know what's going on. Financial malpractice and bad management.
Well, big management, David. The figure I saw
Too
was...
much management, yes, and bad management.
Was it something like...
Mismanagement.
45% increase in administrative staff in the NHS since 1997. Yeah, no, David, I mean, look, there are all sorts of things with the National Health Service that could be improved. I campaigned...
Well, that's not going to happen until you get a government with the guts to do it, and they don't just appear to want to tackle the situation, just pretending it's not happening. That's what I find most incredible.
Most people, David, when they're polled, and it's a fairly emotional question, I suppose, but when people are asked, would you be prepared to pay more tax for a better health service?
Well, we're all going to say yes to that. A few pence. That's not the issue. There's something more serious going on here. Until we actually tackle the fundamental issues that I just mentioned, I don't think much is going to change.
I don't think you're wrong. And David, of course, your constituency, one that was very much in the news last week, with your local MP Philip Lee, resigning a junior ministerial post, now joining the anti-Brexit rebels. But David, when the Prime Minister says this morning that there's going to be this Brexit dividend by 2023, do you believe her?
Well, I don't really know enough about the ins and outs of politics to not believe it, but I'd be surprised if that really happens.
I think, to be honest, if we did just leave and stop paying the money and forge new global trade deals and cut regulation...
Well, that's what we should be doing,
Well, that's what I think too. And you're obviously a Eurosceptic, David. What's going to happen to Philip Lee in that constituency?
What's made me a Eurosceptic? What's going to happen here?
Yeah.
I think he could be in some difficulty. The proper number of people are not happy about what's happened. He said he knows that the majority of people in Bracknell voted to come out, and he's quite clearly very keen to remain, isn't he? So,
fanatical. And David, you were about to say what made you a Eurosceptic.
Yes, the European Social Fund. I witnessed. Well, I didn't witness it. I've heard and I've seen financial malpractice in the European Social Fund funding a lot of so-called training schemes in this country via the DWP, and a lot of fraud going on there.
We can't throw around allegations of fraud willy-nilly, but I understand exactly what you're saying. David, I thank you. On Twitter, I get the truth about Theresa May's NHS funding promise is that she sees the Brexit bus lie as an embarrassing totem of the Remain campaign. I don't agree with that. She wasn't part of the Leave campaign. She was part of the Remain campaign. And given how disloyal, publicly, Boris has been to her again and again and again, she could have left that problem neatly parked with him. In fact, what she's chosen to do is to pick it up, to link EU withdrawal with the National Health Service, which is exactly what Vote Leave wanted to happen during the campaign. And in doing so, she's given Boris a hell of a short-term political boost. That's my view. What does Mark in Hitchin in Hertfordshire think? Good morning, Mark.
Yeah, morning, Nigel. Yeah, well, we all know, once you go past the headline, it's a total lie. And we know it's a total lie because the government's already told us that. It's already told us that we're going to take a £15 billion hit after Brexit. So when we get our £10 billion back from the EU, that will fill only 10 billion of the 15 billion that we're going to lose. And not only that, when we get the 10 billion back, they've already committed to spend that money elsewhere. They've already committed, for example, to give some of the money to the farmers, to give them back their subsidies. So it's just one great big lie.
No, that's not quite true, actually, because the net figure is 9 or 10 billion a year. That's after the farmers have been paid. But hey, I don't want to split hairs, Mark. But do you think politically it's quite a clever headline this morning?
I think it's a damn right lie, and I think people are going to fall for it because, as you said, people are going to be rushing out the door.
Yeah.
But what people must remember is in the Conservative manifesto, it said they would not be borrowing and they would not be raising taxes. So they've gone against their manifesto. And if they really were serious about getting money, last Friday, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs issued the report, which they issue every year, to point out they haven't collected £33 billion of taxes. So why don't they go and collect the £33 billion?
It would help, wouldn't it?
The government has. Well, it would pay that straight away. And the reality is, the only way you're going to be able to fund this, there is no money coming from Brexit. You've already had Paul Johnson very annoyed from the IFS all over the media saying, why are they saying it? They know it's not true because they've told us it's not true already.
Yeah, I mean, whether Brexit costs money or not, what is true, Mark, and Paul Johnson's made this point, I mean, 100% with him, is that if we're going to go on paying during the transition period, the equivalent of a full membership fee, that money won't be free. A deeply sceptical Mark from Hitchin there. And Martin on Facebook says, 600 million a week? We're going to need a bigger bus. Love it. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive on LBC, and it's now 10:30 and time for the news with Philip Chryssikos.
Theresa May has told LBC there'll be an extra £384 million a week for NHS England after Brexit and how it'll be paid for.
Partly from the Brexit dividend. That's because we're not going to be spending vast sums of money on the EU every year. We as a country will contribute a bit more.
But taxes and borrowing are expected to rise to cover the increase in NHS funding. The full interview with the Prime Minister is on our website at lbc.co.uk, while Nigel will continue leading Britain's conversation on that story next. The mother of a severely epileptic boy is calling for a meeting with the Home Secretary. Charlotte Caldwell wants to discuss legalising medicinal cannabis for children with similar conditions. Authorities in Spain are helping the 630 migrants who've been stranded at sea for a week. The first Italian government ship accompanying the aid boat Aquarius has docked in Valencia. LBC weather, cloudy with showers in the east, cloudy with patchy rain in the west, a high of 18 degrees.
LBC Travel, there are various road closures around Clapham Common today for the London to Brighton cycle ride. That's including Burntwood Lane and Nightingale Lane. It's also looking very slow on Clapham Common South and also on the A24 through Balham area as well. There are lots of road closures in the city until 6 o'clock this evening for the city run, including Cannon Street, St Paul's Churchyard, Queen Victoria Street and also Cheapside. And the Piccadilly Underpass remains closed westbound at Hyde Park Corner for emergency roadworks there. On the trains, Southern are not running between Clapham Junction and Watford Junction because of engineering works. LBC Travel, I'm Emily Rose.
This is LBC.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Mo.
Was your house built slap bang in the middle of Mo Farah's daily running route? No? Great! Then why not use Yopa to sell your home? You get your own dedicated local estate agent who'll sell your home in no time at all. See what I did there, Mo?
Yeah, good one.
You're most welcome. That's not as good. Book a free home valuation at yopa.co.uk. Yopa. Seriously, why not? Terms apply.
Is your MOT or service due? At QuickFit, we've got over 500 centres across the UK that can do both, and most of them are open 7 days a week. Plus, with our special offers, there's always a great deal to be had. So head down to your local QuickFit today or book online and drive away happy.
Choosing your new ride and about to get your car finance from the dealership? Hold up.
Before you take their offer, compare car finance deals at Confused.com and you could save over £1,000. Now let's try that again. Choosing your new ride? Visit Confused.com/car finance and you could save over £1,000 versus the dealer. Representative APR 5.9%. Based on £9,000 hire purchase loan on a £10,000 car with a £1,000 deposit and repayment over 48 months. Credit subject to status. Visit Confused.com/car finance for verification.
Connor, that was quite a shift.
Yeah, you know, credit to the team.
Any assists?
Yeah, like with the new Sony XF87 TV, with an exceptionally realistic picture. Just 1199 for the 55-inch. In fact, buy any 55-inch plus TV this summer, there's a 1 in 20 chance to get your money back. At Curry's PC World, we help you get it right.
16 plus, excludes Northern Ireland, ends 26th of 6th. Register 32 to 42 days after purchase. Full terms at currys.co.uk/free TV.
Right now, you can drive off with Aviva car insurance rated 5-star by de facto from just £176 a year. And should you need us, our claims line is open 24/7. Get a quote today direct from aviva.co.uk.
10% of customers paid £176 or less for our standard cover. November 2017 to January 2018. Priced individually.
Service.
New Muller Spreadable?
Made with real churned butter for a creamy taste. Perfect on my canapes.
It's so Muller-licious. Lose the toppings. It's so good all by itself.
Hey!
New Muller Spreadable. Muller, official spreadable of British athletics.
Available only at selected Tesco stores. Subject to availability.
The last thing you need in London is more stuff. The London Storage Vaults are in an underground vault near Oxford Circus. It's self-storage that's convenient, climate-controlled and completely safe. Ideal for everything from sports equipment, stock, furniture or artwork, with free collection from Zones 1 and 2. There's 24/7 access and prices start from just £10 a week.
London Storage Vaults, the future of self-storage. Visit londonstoragevaults.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Prime Minister May is all over the media this morning, including an interview here with Tom Swarbrick on LBC. And she's making this big announcement. 20 billion plus coming for the National Health Service, and much of it coming from the Brexit dividend. Was indeed Boris's £350 million a week, written on the side of the big red bus, actually correct all along? Or is it just very, very cynical political spin that is covering up really quite big tax rises? But I tell you what, however cynical, and so far nearly all of you have been, however cynical you may be, it is a pretty clever political move. May not be very honest, and I don't think it's very honest, because for goodness sake, if she wants a transition period, we're going to go on paying 9 or 10 billion a year to be part of it for the next 3 years. So, you know, it's nonsense in terms of finance, but politically it's probably really very clever. And all of this will happen by 2023-24, when she won't even be in politics anyway. It's easy to make promises, isn't it, when you know you're not going to be there. Tina on Facebook, deeply cynical. A promise way off in the future means nothing. Robert says, as long as she sticks to getting us out of the EU, I will always get behind her. Well, she did sound a little bit more determined this morning, perhaps, than she's been for some time. On Twitter, I get the money will not be used for training, and Brexit is still forcing doctors and nurses to leave. It won't fix the problem. I'm not sure that's right, because the other announcement today that she's made, and this is not getting much publicity, but it's confirmation that any cap on non-EU doctors and nurses is going to be lifted completely. So you can say we desperately need doctors and nurses, and I can say, why the hell aren't we training doctors and nurses? But it's yet again, a weakening of the government's immigration policy. And if some of you this morning listening to this in 2010, 2015 and 2017 voted Conservative, you were told in each of those manifestos they would reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. Of course, they never meant it. They just wanted you to vote for them. Maybe you're beginning to feel a bit done, because the main reason the NHS needs vastly more amounts of money each year is our population is rising by 500,000 people a year, and this government is doing absolutely diddly squat to address the net numbers coming into Britain every single year. Andy from Bristol is my next caller. Good morning, Andy.
And good morning. Long time no speak.
Yeah, good to have you back on the show. So, is this clever politics by Theresa May?
Well, as I said to your people on the phone,
Yep.
I suspect there might be a general election in the air.
Oh.
I think she's hedging her bets that she may have to go to the country.
Oh, you're a super cynic, Andy, aren't you? Well, I tell you what is interesting, is now we have a Conservative Party pledging more future money for the NHS than the Labour Party.
And defence, of course.
Oh,
I mean, it's all going ahead, isn't it? New aircraft for the aircraft carrier arriving.
Yep.
And we've had all our Christmases in one go, haven't we, in the last week?
I mean, is it?
HMS Agincourt, all signed off, ready to go.
Yep. Is it, Andy, that she's got such trouble with her own backbenches?
The Prime Minister is no fool, and neither are many of the people in Cabinet. And they must be... I just wonder if they see stormy weather as the Navy say ahead and are edging their bets. And it wouldn't be a bad thing, I don't think.
Well, you know, Andy, I said on this Sunday morning show about 8 weeks ago that I thought there was the prospect of an October general election coming up, and a lot of people sort of raised their eyebrows, but she really has got a problem, hasn't she, with some of this Brexit legislation. She really, really does, because, you know, Philip Lee, Anna Soubry, all these people, Ken Clarke, they are determined, and Dominic Grieve, the mastermind of all of this, they are determined to get a veto on any final deal or no deal. And maybe she simply hasn't got the numbers. Maybe her best prospect, Andy, is to have another general election. And I know the last one rather blew up in her face, but maybe, given where the polls are, she wins a proper majority.
I just consider it, and you're into this business, I'm not. I just think that there are going to be problems coming up now in the next 2 years, 2.5 years, not only with Brexit, but so many things. Sadly, Parliament doesn't reflect any decent politicians on all sides of the House. I mean, the whole thing is a mess. I personally wish Scotland had have actually voted to leave. I think all that would have been better out of the way as well. We've been without Scotland since Elizabeth I.
But Andy, Andy, I mean, the fact is that you know, however much the SNP wanted Scottish separatism, it didn't happen then, and it's further away from happening now, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. I'll let you get on anyway. There's my time.
No, Andy, listen, it's a great point. Thank you. And Andy's saying a general election could be just round the corner. That's why she's doing it. Have to say, there is a certain strong logic, is there not, in what Andy's saying. You can almost see this, can't you? You know, vote for me. I'm going to deliver Brexit. All the money's going to the NHS. It's a good, strong, simple message. Whether it's true or not, of course, is irrelevant. This is politics we're talking about. Career politics. Nigel, please explain why Boris's statement was contentious. He didn't say that we'd have 350 million more. He said we'd take back control of 350 million. Isn't this completely correct, since the previous rebates weren't cash, but specifically blah, blah, blah. Adam, you're absolutely right. If you read the wording on the bus, the way that it was put, it was about taking back control and spending more on the NHS. But hey, that is not the big takeout that everybody got. The big takeout everybody got is that it's an extra 350 million a week for the NHS, and you can't argue it any other way. Morning, Nigel. I think that politics-wise, this announcement about the NHS is just a sweetener for Brexiteers before the announcements that kick them in the teeth, says John from Sydenham. Oh, gosh, you've spoilt my Sunday morning, John. Let's go to Morris, who's calling from Edgware. Good morning, Morris.
Good morning to you, Nigel.
So, is this clever politics, Morris?
All politics is clever. You were involved with it enough, and you still are.
Well, some of it's pretty stupid, Morris, actually. But
yes. Thank you for saying that, because it's the House of Commons, but it's not necessarily the House of Common Sense, but still.
Yeah. Well, Morris, the one thing from last week, of all the global events last week, and there were some amazing things, weren't there, with, you know, Donald Trump in signing up in Singapore with the North Koreans, a pact, and all sorts of things going on. But the one impression that stuck with me over the course of the weekend was seeing that parliamentary committee last week. Every single one of them Remainers, and nearly every single one of them representing Leave constituencies. And I think, despite the fact that we had this referendum, I don't think the gap between our career politicians and ordinary people has been closed at all.
Well, anyhow, Nigel, what I wanted to come on to you about is regarding, it's great to have however much money that the government is going to spend, give to the NHS. But what we haven't heard is whether the Treasury and the senior management, if they've got any sense, are going to haven't told us that we're going to now crack down on the wastage of money that goes on in the health service. Some years ago in Hampshire, in a hospital there, spent money on a whole new computer system, and it was never used. But all the money was spent on whatever money was spent on that. Secondly, in my neck of the woods, a hospital, a person in a particular department decided to rebrand the name of the hospital organisation.
Yeah.
And the chairman just waved it through. Of course, when I stood up and complained about it, sit down, you're not allowed to speak about anything in this particular meeting. I said, I and many others are paying your wages. You'll listen. How much extra money is going to be spent on new stationery, new signage and everything else? And then some bright spots will keep a careful watch on it. So I said you wouldn't have to keep a careful watch on it because you don't need to do it. You don't need to rebrand anything in this particular area. And now I have received from two, because I've got two separate points at two different hospitals, I've got one lot of information from from each hospital regarding an appointment. And then I find from that particular area, and then I find another in the post, another two lots of letters from another part of the NHS down in Bexley. Now, why?
No, but so Maurice, if you were asked, are you happy to pay more taxes for a better health service? You would say,
I would be happy to pay extra tax if we knew that the money was being spent wisely.
Yeah, no, I think
want to know.
That's a very fair point.
And I think everyone else wants to know, why is it we are allowing people into this country to misuse, and it's known, misuse the national health for money they haven't even paid for.
Maurice, you raise a fair point, and it's a big concern of many, many of our callers on this subject that I've had over the last 18 months that I've been here at LBC. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC, and it's now 10:45.
This is LBC.
You've worked hard, your company has flourished, and you're deservedly reaping the fruits of your labour. However, you're now ready to retire and call it a day. But how do you ensure an orderly exit to realise maximum value from your business? At Barnes Rofe, our specialists have been busy helping clients with bespoke succession planning and business exit strategies. Call us today to help plan for your retirement. Barnes Rofe. Clever accountants for mature businesses.
Hello, sir. So you're interested in our Vivaro van with up to 4
years warranty?
Exactly. Plus up to 4
years servicing?
Right again. And 4 years 0% APR finance with Vauxhall Help to Buy.
Really?
Search Vauxhall Vivaro. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Conditional sale. 4 years 0% APR. Minimum 18% deposit plus VAT at 20% on total price. Financed by Vauxhall Finance subject to status. 18 plus. Business users only. T's and C's, mileage limitations and exclusions apply.
Exciting lineup here from the little team. Budweiser 4 cans, $3.99. Snacktastic tortilla chips, 69p. And Gallero Premium Lager, 4 cans, $2.79. The first half looks like a mouth-watering prospect. Little, big on quality, little on price. Subject to availability. Selected stores. Prices in Scotland and NI may vary.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best-read Sunday paper. And free inside every copy this weekend, a superb Weight Watchers Flex for Summer Food Diary. It's the perfect way to help you follow Weight Watchers' most flexible programme ever. Packed with tasty snack ideas and top tips to keep you on track, it'll help you enjoy the food you love and still look and feel fabulous. Free Weight Watchers Flex for Summer Food Diary. Only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
Every child in London is breathing toxic air, mainly caused by road vehicles. To help tackle this, the ultra-low emission zone is coming to central London for petrol and diesel vehicles. It will operate 24 hours a day, every day of the year, from the 8th of April 2019, in addition to the weekday congestion charge. Search ULEZ to check your vehicle meets the emission standards and to plan your options. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's the big announcement, 20 billion extra a year for the National Health Service, and that's just for starters, and lots of it going to come from the Brexit dividend. Was Boris, after all, right to put £350 million a week on the side of that big red bus? Is she just really getting us ready for a general election? Is she preparing us for lots of very bad news and huge concessions to come? Well, all of that, I think, is possible. Craig on Facebook certainly thinks so when he says if she wins a majority, she'll have a green light for Brexit. If she loses out, Corbyn gets the blame. Now, Sean thinks there's cleverer work afoot here. He said, is this also not a hidden warning to Brussels that we can walk away with no deal to pay for it? I think it's two fingers to Brussels and Barnier. Sean, I wish that were true. I really, really wish that were true. But as we head towards the countdown to June the 28th, which is the next big summit in Brussels, that Theresa May will attend with all the other prime ministers and presidents from around Europe. I don't think the Prime Minister's going to go there and bang the table or swing her handbag. I suspect there are many, many more concessions that we are going to make, and I think she just wants us to get over the line on March the 29th at 11 p.m. And of course that will be a big historic break with the treaties, but we could, and we had John Mills on earlier, veteran Eurosceptic, making the point we could finish up actually in a worse place during that transition period. I'm going to Tuscany to speak to Tony. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, Nigel. I think for the past week or so, Mrs. May has been on a charm offensive to soften us up for a general election.
You do, yeah.
This was the big gun today, the NHS thing. But if you look for the last week, she was on the television telling us how sorry she was she didn't empathise more with the people in the fire in London.
Yeah, Grenfell,
She managed to get cannabis quite quickly to that young guy in the hospital who needs it. With the help of Sabi Jadu.
Yeah, okay.
She came down like a ton of bricks on that old MP who voted against the uplifting of whatever you call it, the cameras and the skirts.
Upskirting, yep.
And she knows that Corbyn has more positions on Brexit than the Kama Sutra has. And the people
That's
want to see Diane Abbott running things in the Home Office. I think external forces are so in her favour because Merkel's impotent. Macron is a two-faced wimp. Do you know he has closed the border between Italy and France and then complained this morning that we didn't here in Italy take that boat of refugees? There's the border.
There's a lot of hypocrisy. What is happening, of course, Tony, all across Europe is, and you're there in Italy, where Salvini.
Oh, yeah. You know what we're calling Salvini, the captain. That's his nickname.
The captain. Well, I tell you what, he's a pretty effective captain. His popularity ratings are going through the roof, and
his popularity ratings went from 20% to 53% in the last 2 weeks.
I know.
I was out last night with some friends, and they said we were talking about it, obviously, because we're all political nerds. And one of my mates stood up and said, "Well, Italy's not in the World Cup, but at least we've got Salvini."
Well, one thing for certain, Tony, for me, for my money, Merkel is the past, Salvini is the future. Tony, thank you. Another caller who thinks she's getting us ready for a general election. And when I mused on this a couple of months ago here on a Sunday morning, I really am beginning to think it may well be the only way she has out of this, because the numbers in Parliament aren't there. Much of that, I believe, is her fault for a total lack of leadership. I was on the train this morning, and a chap said to me, "Can I come and sit with you?" And I had a chat with him, and he just turned 60, and he said, "Mr. Farage, can I ask you, is she the worst Prime Minister ever?" I thought, well, where'd you get that from? Oh, he said, just listening to my grandparents talk. Well, whether she's the worst Prime Minister ever or not is up to you to make your own minds up, but she's certainly one of the least decisive, which is why today seems to be a bit outside the box. It's not the kind of thing she normally does. Something's around the corner. General election, big concessions, I don't know. What does Julia from Herne Hill make of it all this morning? Hello.
Hello, Nigel. What an honour to speak to you. We're firm Brexiteers, and we think you're another Cromwell.
Well, Julia, it's very sweet of you, but Cromwell was a Puritan. I could never be called that, of course. But
Right, OK.
So what's she doing, Julia? Why is she doing this, and why now?
I think I've been cursing the life out of the woman, actually, but I think she's probably fairly smart in many ways, and I think she may be putting herself on the side of the angels with putting this, saying that Brexit money will save the NHS and all the rest of it, if we believe it or not. But it's putting, with the vote coming up on Wednesday, it's going to embarrass the Remainers who are clotting up against her. And it may be a ploy to just say, well, look, you sod, you know, you're causing trouble. We could have all this extra money for the NHS and just stop misbehaving. It may be a clever ploy with Wednesday coming up. I'm looking on the angle of politics.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Julia, I think it is clever politics. I've said so repeatedly this morning. It is from her perspective, it is good positioning. Whether the numbers add up or not, I don't know. And I've been saying, is it to stave off bad news? Is it to prepare for a general election? And you've added a third dimension, which is, you know, dare defy me in the House of Commons and you're stopping money going for the health service. Julia, it's a very, very credible idea. I thank you very much indeed for your call. Paul from Stanmore says to me, how can there be a Brexit dividend if we have to pay $40 billion to leave? Well, Paul, I have to say a couple of things on that. Firstly, one of the reasons that the exit bill is as huge as it is effectively, during transition, we are continuing to pay a membership fee, which of course means this money won't be freed up for some time to come. But also, what I want to hear from her is this. We won't be paying a penny of an exit fee unless you give us a reasonable trade deal. Now, that strikes me as being a fair, sensible and balanced negotiation. And occasionally we hear the line, you know, nothing is agreed until everything's agreed. But Monsieur Barnier doesn't look at it like that. Monsieur Barnier says, right, we've got this promise, you know, let's put that in the bottom drawer and move on to the next issue. And I'd love to see her on June the 28th in Brussels. I'd love to see her say, you know, unless you're sensible with us, you ain't getting a penny. That's what I'd like to see, but I won't be holding my breath. I'm waiting for it. Beverly is calling from Maidenhead. Good morning, Beverly.
Good morning, Nigel. Nigel, I'm a keen Brexiteer and I'm extremely worried about all this because I'm fearful that if there is a general election and she vastly increases her majority, she can then ignore the Brexiteers in her party.
Do you know, when she called that snap election in 17, I thought if she was 20 points ahead in the polls, I thought far from being good from a Brexit perspective, this is actually very bad from a Brexit perspective. And in a sense, you know, the DUP holding her feet to the fire is, I think, not a bad thing in many ways. They've been pretty firm. They've been pretty firm on the integrity of the UK and on Brexit. I mean, you're there in Maidenhead, Beverly. She's your MP, isn't she?
Yes, unfortunately. We did our best in
Come on, you've got the
Nigel,
you've got
the
Prime Minister. You've got the honour of having the Prime Minister as your local MP. You should be very proud of that in Maidenhead, surely.
I've lived here for 30 years and my vote has never counted for anything. I voted UKIP, you know, from 2010 onwards, and you know, I'm now very much involved with UKIP, and I'm genuinely very, very fearful about all of this.
Well, she's putting a lot of big good news out there, Beverly. For some reason, we just don't quite exactly know what it is. But I'm worried. Do you think, Beverly, a general election is possible if she can't get votes through Parliament?
I think she might go for it, and as I say, the trouble is that most voters aren't that interested in politics. They don't know what's going on, and they might very well she might very well end up with a large majority. And as I say, and then just ignore all the Brexiteers in her party. It's more important to her to hold the Conservative Party together and keep the Conservative Party in power. I don't think she cares about the country.
Oh, I think she does care about the country, Beverly, but she's just not a real conviction politician. And who would have thought, Beverly, that we'd have finished up, you know, who'd have thought that we'd finish up with a Prime Minister through the Brexit process who voted Remain? Beverly, I thank you. I've got time for one last call on this. Bob from Northampton. Hello, Bob. Good morning.
Yeah, morning, Nigel. Just a quick one about this whole extra money for the NHS. I actually think it's a bit of a red herring, and the major problem is it's not the money. You could give the NHS all the money in the world. I don't think it'd be enough. The bigger problem is there's too many people using the NHS.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Someone at last agreeing with me that a population rising by 500,000 people every year is putting huge, unsustainable pressure on it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think on a wider issue, it affects just about everything else that's going on in the country. This country, I believe, only has the infrastructure for about 55 million people. That affects schools, the roads, education, the NHS, doctors, everything. And we're rapidly heading towards 70 million. You won't find any other mainstream politicians agreeing, of course, because they'll be branded racist, xenophobes.
And Bob, it's the same when you talk about housing. You know, you say, well, surely if there are more people and we have to build a new dwelling every 4 minutes just to cope with immigration, isn't this an issue? But as you say, you're branded an extremist for doing so. Bob, I thank you for your call. I thank all of you for your calls. Well, lots of talk there about a general election, which is interesting, isn't it? So Jeremy Corbyn this morning has lashed back at critics of the Labour Live Festival that, of course, took place yesterday. There were photographs showing quite a low turnout for the event. Now, some of those may have been unfair, but he has taken, and the Labour Party have taken, a fair bit of mocking about how few people turned up at their own rock concert. But here's the odd thing. Labour are 7 points behind the Tories. Why are Labour not capitalising on the Conservative civil war that is being played out on a daily basis? If you think it's a lack of message, well, call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think Corbyn just doesn't cut the mustard, in which case text to 84850 and tweet and tell me why, using Farage and LBC at LBC, Labour should be surely 7 points in the lead, given the mess the Conservatives are in.
On your radio, on your phone, and here.
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, Theresa May has told LBC the NHS in England will receive £384 million a week after Brexit.
Of course, we'll be funding this partly from the Brexit dividend. That's because we're not going to be spending vast sums of money on the EU every year. I've always said we'll spend that money on our priorities. The NHS is our number one priority. We as a country will contribute a bit more. And I'm clear that we need to make sure that this money goes into patient care in the interests of patients and isn't wasted on bureaucracy.
The Prime Minister adds that £384 million a week is more than £350 million a week promised by the Leave campaign in the EU referendum. In real-term funding, it's an additional £20 billion a year by 2024. But it's expected taxes and borrowing will rise to pay for that NHS funding. In response, Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth has told LBC the total amount of money still isn't enough.
Every single health expert is saying that the NHS, after 8 years of severe austerity, of cuts, of the waiting list now over 4 million, to say it's coming from a Brexit dividend, Theresa May is being dishonest. Nobody believes she's going to find this money from a so-called Brexit dividend.
The Prime Minister has also told LBC the government is to lift the Tier 2 visa cap to allow more foreign medical professionals to come to the UK to work after Brexit. And that full interview with Theresa May is on our website at lbc.co.uk. The mother of a boy with severe epilepsy wants a meeting with the Home Secretary to discuss legalising medicinal cannabis oil. Billy Caldwell's had some of his supply returned by the Home Office after previously having it taken away by Customs at Heathrow Airport last Monday. The 12-year-old's mother, Charlotte, who's from County Tyrone, says it needs addressing.
The confiscation of Billy's medicine was based on bureaucracy. It was based on outdated laws and outdated policies, and that has to stop. I'm not leaving London until Billy gets the rest of his medicine back. The Home Office are still holding 6 bottles.
Charity workers are helping the first migrants from a group of more than 600 who've arrived in Spain after being stranded at sea. They were rescued last weekend but were refused entry by Italy and Malta. Labour says its frontbench team is willing to meet Donald Trump when he visits the UK next month. Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry says it's normal protocol for a visiting president to meet with the official opposition party, but she's standing by her remarks about President Trump having called him an an asteroid of awfulness. England's World Cup football squad are in training this morning before flying 1,000 miles across Russia for their opening match of the tournament. They play Tunisia in their opening Group G game tomorrow evening. LBC weather: cloudy with showers in the east, cloudy with patchy rain in the west, a high of 18 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
Asteroid approaching.
Mayday, mayday, open the airlock.
Okay, keep your hair on. Right, engaging airlock. Now, where is it? This one?
Airlock engaged.
Oh, yes, come on in!
Yes! What? The ship's gone.
Hey, oh, come on.
Oh, really? Your internet's gone again, is it? What's the point in playing this game if your broadband keeps going? Just get Vodafone.
You get Vodafone.
Excuse me?
Nothing.
Vodafone guarantee your home broadband speeds, or money off until it's fixed. The future's exciting. Ready? 18-month agreement subject to credit check and availability. Guaranteed minimum sync speed from your local exchange and your router, or claim money off your next bill. New and upgrading fibre customers only. For full details and terms, visit vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
LBC Travel, there are various road closures around Clapham Common for the London to Brighton cycle ride today, including Burntwood Lane and Nightingale Lane. It's also looking very slow on Clapham Common South and also on the A24 through Balham area. There are extensive road closures in the city until 6 o'clock this evening for the city run today, including Cannon Street, St Paul's Churchyard, Queen Victoria Street and also Cheapside. Wilbury Way in Wood Green is blocked in both directions near the A10 because of an accident, and on the train South Eastern are suspended between Victoria and Lewisham and also between Victoria and Bromley South because of an obstruction on the line. LBC Travel, I'm Emily Rose.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Do you know, I can't remember the Conservative Party more divided and more at each other's throats than at any time since the great divisions over Maastricht took place in the House of Commons back in 1993. Then we had Prime Minister John Major describing some of his own cabinet and some of their backbench friends who were on the Eurosceptic side as bastards. Quite sorry, it's Sunday morning, I do apologise, but it was Johnny Major that said it, not me. And I wonder what the Prime Minister now calls the dozen or so in the Conservative Party who now are not fighting this from a Eurosceptic position, they're fighting it from a Europhile. We must stay part of the EU position, and I bet there's some pretty rich language being used about those. And certainly, I mean, you know, Anna Soubry gets up in the House of Commons and you can hear it's her own side shouting abuse at her. So they are split. They are divided. And with the best will in the world, you know, I think that the Prime Minister is not exactly the greatest leader we've ever seen, even if that 16-year-old on the train this morning was wrong to say she was the weakest Prime Minister perhaps ever. But they've really got problems. And yet, we have the last piece of polling I saw from YouGov a few days ago puts the Conservatives on 44% and the Labour Party on 37%. Lib Dems 8, UKIP 3, Greens 3. That is the last state of play in the polls. It is a substantial Conservative lead. Now, think back to the last general election. You know, in the February of that year, Corbyn appeared to be pretty much in an electoral trough. And yet, the campaign, from the moment he launched the manifesto, something started to happen. He started to connect. He started to become trendy. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn. He even appeared on the stage at Glastonbury. Massive crowds of adoring fans. And so the stage was set for Labour Live, which took place yesterday. Now, I'm always sceptical when you see photographs of nobody in the crowd. I mean, you know, the press have done this to me before. No one turns up to hear Farage. Well, you know, if you photograph the stage 2 hours before I'm arriving, it's not surprising no one's there. But let's get an eyewitness account. Paul Richards, commentator and pro-Labour supporter. Paul, you were there yesterday, is that right?
No, that's not right, but I was following it very closely on Twitter all day long, Nigel. So
right, OK.
Well, I got a sense of what happened.
Yeah, because as I say, it's very easy to be unfair about an event. It's all about when you take the picture. And I saw some stuff in the Conservative press this morning, a big stage and about 4 people, and I'm sure that isn't quite true.
No, it's not true. I mean, there were larger crowds towards the end of the event, and at the start of the event, 20 or 30 people, easily taking a photograph, as you say. But the bigger point is, it was a 15,000 capacity venue.
Yeah.
Even if 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000 people turned up, it was exactly the wrong kind of venue for the event. And we think it's going to cost the Labour Party's members about £1 million.
£1 million?
To this. Because, they were giving away tickets by the end. Some people £35, but others were getting them for free. There were free coaches laid on, busing people in from wherever they wanted to come from. And it was just it's a terrible shame. There's nothing wrong with cultural politics and things like Red Wedge back in the day got young people like me involved. But if you build it around the personality of the leader and you organise it from party HQ, it's never going to be the same. And this, I'm afraid, was a bit of a white elephant.
But that cult of personality, Paul, there was a moment, perhaps there were a few months, of last year when that cult of personality around Corbyn was really very strong, wasn't it?
Yes, and it's mystifying for those of us that have been in politics a long time and believe politics to be about ideas and manifestos, elections and candidates, to see people turning up and doing this terrible kind of incantation, the chanting, the hero worship, the T-shirts, the tattoos, the knitted Jeremy Corbyns. It's very un-Labour, undemocratic.
Well, haven't we just become like the Americans, Paul?
Well, even that is still around ideas and big, clashing ideas of the state and so on. This is more like a fan club, and I think that was the mistake that the people that organised this made, was assuming that a large crowd at Glastonbury chanting would then be replicated in North London, when in fact the people in Glastonbury had gone to see a band, and then
he happened to turn up. Yes, yeah.
Now, football crowds are chanting it. It's just a chant. It doesn't mean anything particularly, and they misunderstood that. And then the hubris was that people then say the event was a failure. I'm sure the people that went to it, and I'm sure they'll be phoning you in a second, had a lovely time. But the fact is, it was massively under capacity. It was a grandiose event staged to fulfill this kind of egomania, and it's going to cost us all a lot of money. I remember
£1 million.
And Unite. Unite were bought up tickets, which they're then giving away as well. There was an ice cream van. I don't know who paid for that. It really just a number of things. I tell you, the most interesting thing that happened on the whole day was the very brave young people who unveiled a placard saying, or a banner saying, "Stop backing Brexit," aimed at Jeremy Corbyn in the middle of his speech. A courageous thing to do. They were jostled by crowd members and then bundled out.
Well, that was brave. But Paul, what was the message from Corbyn's speech?
Well, it was more of the same, wasn't it? It was he's very good at this kind of rabble-rousing rhetoric and very simplistic messages around social justice and so on, but he didn't address the big issue of the day, which is obviously Brexit.
And where his own party, and I had a caller, Paul, in the last hour, who described the Labour Party's position on Brexit as being more complex than the Kama Sutra, offering more different possibilities. I mean, they are in a mess on this, but what interests me is this. And you yourself, of course, are the author of How to Win an Election, the Art of Political Campaigning, so you've studied these things in depth. They are 7 points behind the Tories, and I'm beginning to think ever more strongly that May's only way out of this could be an October general election. Why, with a split Tory party, are they so far behind?
Well, I think the problem is that you've got this historical moment where you've got a pro-Europe membership of the Labour Party overwhelmingly, and a very Eurosceptic leadership of the Labour Party, and these are the people you'll remember, who were in and around Tony Benn when he was one of the leading opponents of the EEC and the EU. As I think you mentioned, Corbyn voted against the EEC in the referendum.
Absolutely.
And 75.
And voted against everything.
Against the Lisbon Treaty, against the Maastricht Treaty. He voted in favour of a referendum in 2011 on Europe. He called for Article 50 to be triggered immediately when most of us were still asleep on the morning after the result, and he's been marshalling his troops ever since to vote for a hard Brexit. So we've got a hard Brexiteer leadership, of the left, not of the right, but that is an honourable position that has been held by people on the left, but totally out of kilter with his own party membership and MPs, of course. So, and that's why you've got the mess we're in. They're trying to ride two horses at once. The problem is you fall off both.
Well, the Tories did this for years, Paul. The Tories for years tried to ride both horses to keep the party together, and in the end it became unsustainable, and Cameron had to make that pledge of a referendum. Paul, I thank you very much for your analysis. Thank you for joining us this morning. And that was Paul Richards, and he's a former special advisor of the Labour Party as well, so he knows the inside of this. And his analysis is straightforward. Labour's problem is Brexit. They're split. They're all over the place. And we so often, don't we, hear about the Tory party splits on Brexit. The truth is, Labour's got a massive problem. And whilst the membership of the Labour Party may be overwhelmingly pro-EU, I can promise you that in the West Midlands, in the North West, in the North East, in South Wales, through all my years of travelling and campaigning around this country, some of the strongest Eurosceptics are Labour voters and Labour families who come from those regions. And it was interesting because if you go back to the 2015 general election, when I led UKIP and they got 4 million votes, we had a bigger effect on the Labour Party than we had on the Conservative Party. Arguably, if UKIP hadn't been there, Miliband may well, have had a much, much better election performance. He would have had a better election performance. He could have become the Prime Minister. So I still think, whatever Labour do, they are still very vulnerable. And it may only be between 30 and 35% of the overall Labour vote that is Eurosceptic, but it is concentrated in many of those regions and in quite a few marginal seats. So what do Labour need to do? Why are they in so much trouble? Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think it's because they're split on Europe, and until they sort that out, they cannot win an election, particularly if one comes in October. Then call me on 0345 6060 973. Is it perhaps that the party's begun to look a bit extreme? Allegations of anti-Semitism, something that Middle England says this doesn't look quite right. If that's how you feel, text to 84850. And any other bright ideas, please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC. And of course, as ever, you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. And I have to say, I am blown away that cost them £1 million yesterday. Will is calling from Loughton. Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Nigel. Good to talk to you, mate. Nice to meet you unofficially. But I don't believe it's much to do with Brexit. I'm Brexiteer myself, but I do believe the problem with Labour is simply just Jeremy Corbyn himself. When he first came out, he was very much appealing to the disenfranchised and the millennials of the UK, including myself. And he promised a lot of things. And people, I work at, I'm not going to say the institution where I work at, but I work at universities, and the support for him was 99%. It
was huge, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite incredible and quite remarkable. For credit to the guy. I personally can't stand the man. I really can't. But when you spend some time and you look at his views, things like tuition fees, and when he's talking about set trading of arms with Saudi Arabia, none of the things he suggested can do are doable. My father used to be a Labour voter, and I sat him down and went, Dad, everyone my age loves Corbyn. I can't stand him. Am I wrong? And he just laughed at me and said, No, son, I can use a calculator.
Well, yeah, I mean, he overpromised, didn't he, on tuition fees? He wasn't just going to get rid of tuition fees, he was going to wipe off all the debt. And then he was told that might cost $100 billion, and suddenly the story changed. And when you make a big promise on student loans and student fees, and then you're seen to rat on it, as Nick Clegg could tell you if he phoned this show, you pay a very heavy political price for that.
Speaking on that topic, the first time I voted was for the coalition Lib Dem, and I voted Lib Dem because I was going to go to university, and I was one of the people in the streets, causing a bit of trouble because we were promised this thing for our future. It never happened, and I learned very quickly that you got before someone might say something, but you got to go down and look at the numbers, And I think the more time people spend listening to what he's got to say, they look into it. So over the last year, a lot of my friends were very pro Jeremy Corbyn.
Yes,
and they were like, "Well, no, of course not, because he says he can do this." And
so, Will, in short, he's been found out, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I do believe the longer he stays in, the less chance.
Interesting.
I'm not anti-Labour. I'm a Labour in my heart and Conservative in my head. If he's a different leader, I'd consider it. But as long as he's leader, the more he speaks, the less I listen.
Will from Loughton, you couldn't be clearer. Well, the news that the Labour Live Festival, which was designed to be a glorification of the wonderful Jeremy Corbyn as leader, has been a bit of a dud, and it's cost the Labour Party £1 million. Goodness me, a real £1 million. That's not a Diane Abbott £1 million. It's a real £1 million. I wonder, if you were there yesterday, please call me. Tell me, was it a flop? Did you have a good time? You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 11:17.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
Did you not know that North Koreans are routinely arrested and held in camps and forced labour, brutalised, sometimes killed? Oh, you did know that? Well, what is it I'm not telling you?
That you're selective in your critiques, the friends of Jeremy.
What's it got to do with Jeremy?
You defended him for talking about terrorists.
I'm no supporter of Jeremy Corbyn.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper, and free inside every copy this weekend, a superb Weight Watchers Flex for Summer Food Diary. It's the perfect way to help you follow Weight Watchers' most flexible programme ever. Packed with tasty snack ideas and top tips to keep you on track, it'll help you enjoy the food you love and still look and feel fabulous. Free Weight Watchers Flex for Summer Food Diary, only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
Morning, Joe.
Morning, Mo.
Was your house built slap bang in the middle of Mo Farah's daily running route? No? Great! Then why not use Yopa to sell your home? You get your own dedicated local estate agent who'll sell your home in no time at all. See what I did there, Mo?
Yeah, good one.
You're most welcome. That's not as good. Book a free home valuation at yopa.co.uk. Yopa. Seriously, why not? Terms apply.
It's in my hair, my eyebrows, it's even up my nose. They make painting look easy on the telly, but let me tell you, it's not. The wall looks like it's been finger painted by a giant child. Who's going to rescue this? Oh, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Actual professionals who know what they're doing and don't leave the place looking like, well, my face. Now I can concentrate on the important stuff. Whispering peach or dirty mayonnaise. Visit trustatrader.com.
Trustatrader.com. What's your summer soundtrack? Lawn mowing, bee dodging, or 6-speaker touchscreen controlled DAB radio blasting. A new Corsa Energy for £150 initial rental and £150 a month. Search Corsa offers. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903.
Personal contract hire offer on Corsa 3-door Energy 1.4 75 PS in metallic paint. Initial rental £150 plus 47 months at £150. Excess miles over contracted mileage of 20,000 over 48 months charged at 9 pence per mile. Subject to availability and status. You will not own the car. 18 plus T's and C's apply. Offer ends June 30th, 2018. Vauxhall Finance Leasing.
Choosing your new ride and about to get your car finance from the dealership? Hold up. Before you take their offer, compare car finance deals at Confused.com and you could save over £1,000. Now let's try that again. Choosing your new ride? Visit Confused.com/car finance and you could save over £1,000 versus the dealer. Representative APR 5.9%. Based on £9,000 hire purchase loan on a £10,000 car with a £1,000 deposit and repayment over 48 months. Credit subject to status. Visit Confused.com/car finance for verification.
Landlords, Direct Line guarantees to beat other insurers' renewal premiums for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Switch to Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Service.
New Muller Spreadable?
Made with real churned butter for a creamy taste. Perfect on my canapes.
It's so Muller-licious. Lose the toppings. It's so good all by itself.
Hey!
New Muller Spreadable. Muller, official spreadable of British athletics.
Available only at selected Tesco stores. Subject to availability.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
What's gone wrong? Glastonbury. There was Jeremy Corbyn. Tens of thousands of people cheering, whooping it up. I even had reports from a friend of mine who's got a nightclub down in Kent. He said, I've never seen anything like it. Saturday night, they're all on the dance floor. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're all chanting, oh, Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, he seemed to be riding this wave of kind of rock star success, and yet, when the Labour Party themselves put on their own Labour Live concert, it ends up costing them £1 million. And they're 7 points behind in the opinion polls against a Conservative Party where half of them seem to absolutely hate the other half. But Labour, hey, they've got their own splits on Europe. They're not always as visible. They're not fought out on the public stage in quite the same way as the Conservative Party, but boy, they've got problems too. And somebody else who's got problems that is worth mentioning is Angela Merkel. Now, I have to say, she doesn't like me very much. In fact, whenever she meets me or sits opposite me at lunch or sits opposite me in the European Parliament, you know, she looks as though she's just swallowed 3 lemons. So unhappy is she. In fact, she has always fought against anybody with a Eurosceptic opinion and anybody that thinks that immigration should be criticised in any way at all. And it's because of that she's in trouble. You see, what's happened in Germany is there is a newish political party called the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, and they are now having the same effect on German politics that UKIP had on British politics, with one difference. Their 4 million votes in the general election, or the equivalent of, got them 93 seats in Parliament. They scored exactly the same percentage as UKIP. They got 93 seats. And now the effect that's having on the Bavarian Conservatives, the CSU, is huge. And Horst Seehofer, who is the most senior member of the CSU, is now, and he's part of Merkel's government, he's the interior minister, he's now having an open public war with her over what the asylum policy ought to be. Merkel wants an EU solution. Seehofer wants a German solution, as Salvini in Italy wants an Italian solution, and indeed as Viktor Orban in Hungary wants a Hungarian solution. European politics is breaking and fracturing on the issue of immigration. The effect of the AfD in German politics is quite remarkable. It is possible that after her 13 years of rule, and in her fourth term, I could be speaking to you next Sunday and Mrs. Merkel may well have gone. And I promise you one thing, and I feel this in my heart. Merkel is yesterday's politics. Salvini is tomorrow's politics. But back to Corbyn. Why are they 7 points behind? Why are they in so much trouble? And on Twitter, Winston says to me, Labour's economic and Brexit policies are all wrong. They're the work of fantasists. Well, they certainly have some economic credibility problems. Let's ask Charlie, who lives in Danbury in Essex. Charlie, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So were you there yesterday, Charlie?
I was, yeah. I was there from about, 1:30 until after Jeremy Corbyn spoke.
OK, and are you a sort of committed Corbyn supporter and fan?
Well, I'm committed to the ideas that Corbyn espouses, yeah, but I'm not some kind of cultist member of the Labour Party. I'm a member, but I'm not a cultist.
OK. So talk us through your day. What was it like?
I thought it was pretty good. When I got there, I did think it was quite sparsely attended, to be honest. But that was because most of the action was going on in the tents. There were various tents there. The one I spent the most time in was the literary tent, where people were talking about socialist ideas and the future of the Labour Party, etc.
Yeah.
But when Jeremy Corbyn came on, there was quite a lot of people there, and it was a pretty good day. I met lots of people. Made some good contacts and really enjoyed myself. I thought it was fine.
And what did Jeremy's speech? What was the one? What was the big sell from Jeremy Corbyn's speech?
Well, to be honest, I thought the speech was a little bit of a letdown, only because it was a bit of a reiteration of his manifesto commitments. So it was everything that I kind of understood and agreed with anyway. But it was typical Corbyn. It was very passionate, lots of cheering, and I think pretty much everyone there agreed with what he said. But he didn't really say anything new. I'm looking for some kind of new, more radical ideas from the Labour Party, and I hope that happens in conference later this year.
Now, Charlie, they've dropped £1 million on this, and the reason they've done it is because they have actually made it a cult around Jeremy Corbyn. You yourself are not fully subscribed to that. But where does Labour go now, Charlie? I mean, you're 7 points behind against a split Conservative Party.
Yeah, that's not good. Can I just ask you to get your fact checkers on this £1 million figure, because I'm not convinced that that's necessarily true.
Well, I got it from I got that figure from Paul Richards, who's part of Progress and a big Labour supporter. So I'm using him as a source.
Nigel, that is Progress after all, and we know what Progress thinks about Jeremy Corbyn. My understanding.
Well, they're New Labour, aren't they?
Figure, my understanding is the £1 million figure is the insurance cost. The amount that's underwritten. So please do double check.
Well, I tell you what, Charlie. I tell you what we'll do. Tell you what we'll do. We will try and double-check that. But I'm going to get back to this central question. Now, there you are. Yeah. You're an active Labour supporter. You want a Labour government. I mean, the goal, and hey, we got World Cup football, so we're all talking about goals at the moment. And wasn't that amazing? Iceland drawing with Argentina, fantastic. But Charlie, small sovereign state. I could go on, but Charlie, literally, the Tories hate each other. They're in terrible trouble. Brexit's in crisis, and you're 7 points behind. What's got to happen?
Well, that's in the worst opinion poll. I mean, there was an opinion poll I saw this week, and I think Labour were 2 points behind. I think on average we're a bit further behind. But look at how it was before the last election, Nigel. Labour were something like 20 points behind. As soon as an election is called, you'll see much more balance from the media. And Corbyn and the members of the Labour Party will get a fairer crack of the whip in the media. I do think the biggest issue, as you'll probably agree with me on this, is relating to Brexit. Yeah. I suspect that at conference this year it will be debated because it wasn't debated last year. And I have a feeling that Labour are going to come out more strongly in favour of Remain, and that will shake up the political landscape. But who knows?
Charlie,
we need to be more radical. That's my...
People are saying that, a lot of that crowd yesterday were wearing anti-Brexit stickers and badges, and some quite abusive ones. Charlie, let me put this to you. If you get your way, and if the Labour Party under Corbyn becomes one that says we're going to stay part of a single market and part of the customs union and keep open borders, you have just lost millions of votes in the Midlands, the North and South Wales.
That might be right, but I think Labour would get a lot of votes from Remain supporting Tories. I mean, who knows, Nigel?
Do you really think? Do you really think, Charlie, that many Remain supporting Tories would vote Labour when you've got a Marxist as Shadow Chancellor?
I do, and we'd also. I mean, if you look at what happened in Lewisham, and look at how many people went from Labour and the Tories to the Lib Dems. So those type of voters, I think, would go to Labour rather than go to the Tories on a hard Brexit. But, I mean, this is all conjecture at the moment because no one knows what's going to happen with Brexit. No one knows what's going to be negotiated. So we're sort of talking, hypotheticals right now. For me, the most important thing in terms of Labour is getting a fair crack in the media, and I just think that will happen when an election is called. OK. No, Charlie, listen, thank you for your testimony of being there yesterday, and that was really, really a very interesting call. Thank you. And Charlie, I think, does represent a lot of the newish Labour activists. They are very, very pro-Remain, which is fine, but it does not fit at all with old Labour out in the heartlands and leaves them incredibly vulnerable. Goodness me, Brexit has a pretty devastating effect, doesn't it, on both of our mainstream, so-called mainstream political parties. Steve from Aylesbury says, Nigel, people keep going on about the "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn" chant at Glastonbury, but how many of them were under the influence of drugs, which may explain it? Steve, that's a dreadful thing to say. You're talking about illegal substances. In fact, we may talk a bit more about cannabis and its medical use in a moment. But for now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC, and it's now 11:30, and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
Theresa May has told LBC NHS England will receive £384 million a week, partly paid for by money the UK will save when it leaves the European Union. In response, Chris Hobson, who's chief executive of NHS providers, has told LBC he welcomes the Prime Minister's promised clear commitment for the NHS. Children and pregnant women are among those being seen by crisis workers in Spain after docking in Valencia this morning. They're among 630 migrants who were stranded at sea after Italy and Malta refused them entry. Fire crews are using thermal imaging cameras to identify any remaining hotspots as they dampen down the fire that gutted Glasgow's world-renowned School of Art. About 50 firefighters remain at the scene following the fire in the Macintosh building on Friday night. LBC weather: cloudy with showers in the east, cloudy with patchy rain in the west, a high of 18 degrees.
LBC Travel, there are closures around Clapham Common for the London to Brighton cycle ride today. That's including Burntwood Lane and Nightingale Lane. It's causing some delays in the area. It's busy on Clapham Common South and also on the A24 through Balham area. There are also extensive closures in the city until 6 o'clock tonight for the city run today, including Cannon Street, St Paul's Churchyard and also Cheapside. And Wilbury Way in Wood Green is blocked in both directions near the A10 because of an accident. On the train, South Eastern are suspended between Victoria and Lewisham and also between Victoria and Bromley south. That's because of an obstruction on the line. LBC Travel, I'm Emily Rose.
This is LBC.
Did you know you can get real-time updates to find out when your bus is due? There are loads of mobile apps available, powered by TfL data, or you can visit our website, all of which make it easier than ever to plan your journey. Running for the bus may soon be a thing of the past. Search TfL improvements. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
How do you think England are going to do this summer, Bob?
I don't know, John, but I've got a good feeling about Iceland. They're demonstrating an impressive 3-2-1 formation.
That's right. 3 Restaurante pizzas, 2 garlic breads, and a 1.5-liter bottle of Pepsi Max, all for only £5.
With a lineup like that, there's no way you can lose.
Fill your freezer and win at summer with Iceland.
Subject to availability. See in-store for details.
Your future is here. The Global Academy, a forward-thinking state school for 14 to 19-year-olds interested in a media career. Visit globalacademy.com to find out more.
Right now, you can drive off with Aviva car insurance rated 5-star by de facto from just £176 a year. And should you need us, our claims line is open 24/7. Get a quote today direct from aviva.co.uk.
10% of customers paid £176 or less for our standard cover. November 2017 to January 2018. Priced individually.
Connor, that was quite a shift.
Yeah, you know, credit to the team.
Any assists?
Yeah, like with the LG 4K Super UHD TV. It delivers rich, accurate colour from any seat in the room. Just $679 for the 55-inch. In fact, buy any 55-inch plus TV this summer, there's a 1 in 20 chance to get your money back. At Curry's PC World, we help you get it right.
16 plus, excludes Northern Ireland, ends 26th of 6th. Register 32 to 42 days after purchase. Full terms at currys.co.uk/free TV.
The Mail on Sunday is Britain's best read Sunday paper. And free inside every copy this weekend, a superb Weight Watchers Flex for Summer food diary. It's the perfect way to help you follow Weight Watchers' most flexible programme ever. Packed with tasty snack ideas and top tips to keep you on track, it'll help you enjoy the food you love and still look and feel fabulous. Free Weight Watchers Flex for Summer food diary. Only inside this weekend's Mail on Sunday.
At Boots Opticians, we're here to help you discover a stylish new look for less. We've got thousands of frames to choose from, so speak to us and together we'll find the perfect pair for you. In fact, with 2 pairs from £75, why stop at just 1? Book in store or at boots.com. Boots, let's feel good. 2 for £75 on Boots £50 glasses as part of our half-price additional pairs offer. Both pairs must be bought for the same customer in the same transaction. Subject to availability. See in store.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
The bubble has burst. We're a long way from Glastonbury, as the Labour Live event yesterday is seen to be a bit of a flop and has cost the Labour Party allegedly up to £1 million in losses. Either way, they're 7 pips behind in the polls. That's certainly the YouGov poll I saw last Sunday, when they should be ahead, particularly given the Tories' difficulties. What is wrong with the Labour Party? And you know what? Inevitably, we're coming back to Brexit. They're all over the shop. There is no good, clear message. And whilst it's clear that the new, young Corbynite base are Remainers, so many old Labour voters are Leavers, strong Leavers. Before I get to that, just a thought. The sort of heartwarming story, I guess, this morning is that of Charlotte Caldwell from Northern Ireland and her son, Billy. He's the 12-year-old boy. He's got terrible epilepsy and, often having many fits in a single day. And she has found, as a mum, some salvation in cannabis oil. And they've been to Canada. They've loaded up on cannabis oil. They've come back to the United Kingdom, and that has been removed from them by customs, but now Sajid Javid has intervened and said, in this case, for medical use, they can have the cannabis oil back. And it is a story of a mum fighting as hard as she can for her sick young lad. And I mean, it would be difficult to find many people that don't agree with the Home Secretary's judgment. But it does open a very, very much bigger debate on cannabis, whether it's for medical use. And by the way, Queen Victoria was prescribed cannabis for medical use, and I believe stayed on cannabis pretty much for the rest of her life. And that then opens up an even bigger debate about whether we think there should be the decriminalisation, perhaps even full legalisation of products like cannabis. I'm not going to go through it all here, but, I've, as someone that visits America a lot, I now see states where it has been, it's completely there, legal, it's on open sale, and I think it's difficult to change the law and open up cannabis for medical use without having that bigger, broader debate. And I sense we'll be having it in this country far more quickly than many people think. Right, back to Jezza. The failure of the Jez Fest yesterday and why they're behind in the polls. David in Woking has an answer for me. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I wish I did have an answer. Something I don't understand, though, about Labour Remainers in particular is that they moan about corrupt banks, they moan about Tory austerity, and they say how the leaving the EU will affect the youth of Britain. Yet they seem to forget that the EU has been imposing the most punitive austerity across the EU for at least the last 10 years. The banks have destroyed the Greek economy just simply to refinance the banks. And there is up to 65% or 60% unemployment across southern Europe within youth unemployment. So what is there? I'm not sure.
David, when I see a lot of young Labour Remainers out campaigning, I ask them, I didn't know you were so favourable towards Goldman Sachs. I mean, it is the very big multinationals and huge Wall Street investment banks that are the biggest supporters of the European Union project. You're quite right, and yet the Labour youth wants it. And as a continued part of the European Union, you can't nationalise the railways, you can't massively increase public spend. I mean, the whole thing, David, just doesn't make sense. But it's got more, I think, to do with identity. And I think there is a segment of youth, predominantly urban, predominantly London, I would suggest, that have embraced something of a global European identity and see themselves as world citizens. I think that, David, is perhaps what it's about.
You could be right there, Nigel, but as far as Chameleon Corbyn is concerned, I think he's actually a secret Brexiteer. Because if you look at his history, he voted against joining the EEC, he voted against the Maastricht Treaty, he voted against the Lisbon Treaty. Can you tell me what has suddenly changed?
Well, what's changed, David? What's changed is that he is the leader of a fanatically pro-EU parliamentary Labour Party. That's what's changed.
So should he really be their leader?
Well, hardly any of them wanted him to be leader. In fact, some of the people who helped get the 35 signatures to put him on the ballot paper did so out of sympathy, and then he shocked them all by winning. David, it is a real strange one. Corbyn's position against his own fanatical support, and why that, as you quite rightly say, why that fanatical youth support supports a European Union that is now being rejected by the youth in Italy and Austria and elsewhere remains a mystery. David, I thank you very much indeed for your call. Justine says to me, don't diss Jezza. Do you want Amuna, Adonis and Kinnock to take over? Well, I don't care, really. I mean, I just would like to know, honestly, what the Labour Party's position on Brexit is. That's what really matters to me. Nigel, if we have another election, I think people will be voting for their MP rather than their party. I'm not sure who that favours, says Steve in Croydon. Steve, sorry, mate, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. Most people who now vote in elections don't even know who their MP is. They're voting because they like Theresa May or they don't like Theresa May. Our system has become ever more presidential, and those MPs who say, I've been elected 5 times in my constituency. Well, the truth is, if it's a safe Labour seat or a safe Tory seat, a pig's bladder on a stick could get elected in those constituencies. That, I'm afraid, is what we have with first-past-the-post tribal politics. And I was interested today to see Frank Field, an article in the Sunday Telegraph, saying what I've been saying for a long time: abolish the House of Lords, have an elected Senate, but Frank, we need electoral reform in the House of Commons too. We really, really do. If May cause an election, I hope it's when the students are on holiday. Well, Canterbury, of course, was the classic example of that. Canterbury going Labour because of that student vote. I'm not bothered about where the students are when the next election comes. What I am bothered about is that they don't vote twice. because they were actually, many of them, openly boasting they'd voted at their parents' residential address and they'd voted while they were at university, and that does need to be sorted out. Labour's problem is not with Brexit, it's with Corbyn. Centre Remainers like me want to vote for a pro-EU party but will not vote Labour. So it seems whichever way you turn on this, Corbyn has got massive, massive problems over the European question. He's 7 points behind in the polls. Why are Labour in so much trouble? Nobody so far has mentioned the anti-Semitism row. Nobody has mentioned, the fact that actually, perhaps, those continued allegations about extremists within the Labour Party and a blind eye being turned, maybe that is putting off Middle England. Maybe I've got that completely wrong. Well, heading towards the middle of England, Stoke-on-Trent's pretty much there, and Ray's on the line. Good morning.
Morning, Nigel.
So, what needs to happen? Why are they in so much trouble?
Well, they've lost the connect with the working classes. Quite obviously, you've been up here in the Midlands, you've seen it.
Yes.
The things that are being affected with all wage being suppressed and lack of housing and everything, and it affects the working class the most. And if you want to speak to Labour about it, you're some kind of racist. You can't have a grown-up debate.
So, Ray, is there any... do you see, and you are right, there has been increasingly a disconnect between what we call the white working class, they're not all white, by the way, but the white working class and the North London Labour hierarchy. Is anything going to close that gap?
I can't see it happening because they'll say one thing and do another. I remember reading an article from years ago, and I can't for the life of me find it. It was on the internet, and it was Labour peers saying that they found the working classes predominantly non-progressive and predominantly racist. And I thought to myself, you know what? That's quite telling these days when you see what's going on in our community and you see.
Yeah. Well, look at the shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry, who, when she was in Rochester, do you remember there was a white van?
Nigel, I'm touching my white van now with an England flag right next to it.
Ray, was it you parked in Rochester that day?
No, but she'd hate me if she walked past.
She'd hate you. And how are England going to do tomorrow, Ray?
We're going to win.
We're going to win. What score?
3-1.
Tunisia aren't a bad side, you know, Ray.
Well, I think the World Cup's quite close at the moment. There's no team smashing it, are they? So I think we're in with a chance. I think we'll go to the semis. I bet you celebrate St George's Day as well, Ray, don't you? Of course.
So do I. Good man. Thank you very much indeed. Well, Ray there. And, actually, he's in a white van, he's got the cross of St George on it, and somehow this North London Labour Party is not appealing to Ray from Stoke-on-Trent, and there are millions like Ray out there. We thought, didn't we, for the last 6 months, it was the Tory party that had real problems. I suspect Labour's problems are just as big. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 11:45.
This is LBC.
Word in the woods is that 3 little pigs are looking to sell their homes quick. They seem to be in a spot of bother with the big bad wolf called Rick.
Come out, little piggies!
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 48 hours at a fair price and a cash advance if you need one. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Oh, there's a great deal on ripen at home avocados. Sure, they'll be as hard as rock for the first 18 days, 3 hours and 20 minutes. Then they'll be ready to eat. For about 10 minutes, then they'll go off. For a better deal, head to Costa Coffee and grab a delicious piping hot bacon roll or egg muffin for just £2 when you buy any Medio or Massimo hot drink or flat white before 11 a.m. The Coffee Plus menu from Costa Coffee. Visit costa.co.uk for full terms and participating stores.
The last thing you need in London is more stuff. The London Storage Vaults are in an underground vault near Oxford Circus. It's self-storage that's convenient, climate-controlled and completely safe. Ideal for everything from sports equipment, stock, furniture or artwork, with free collection from Zones 1 and 2. There's 24/7 access and prices start from just £10 a week.
London Storage Vaults, the future of self-storage. Visit londonstoragevaults.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Right now, you can drive off with Aviva car insurance rated 5-star by de facto from just £176 a year. And should you need us, our claims line is open 24/7. Get a quote today direct from aviva.co.uk.
10% of customers paid £176 or less for our standard cover. November 2017 to January 2018. Priced individually.
Hello, sir. So you're interested in our Vivaro van with up to
4 years warranty?
Exactly. Plus up to
4 years servicing?
Right again. And 4 years? 0% APR finance with Vauxhall Help to Buy.
Really?
Search Vauxhall Vivaro. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Conditional sale. 4 years 0% APR. Minimum 18% deposit plus VAT at 20% on total price. Financed by Vauxhall Finance subject to status. 18 plus. Business users only. T's and C's, mileage limitations and exclusions apply.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
The NHS will receive an extra £384 million a week, partly from a Brexit dividend. What in heaven's name is that?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
Well, the Jazz Fest, as some call it, the Labour Live concert, as it's more correctly named, yesterday wasn't quite like Glastonbury. In fact, not enough people turned up. They were giving tickets away for free at the end, and the Labour Party have taken a great big financial hit on this. It could be as much as £1 million. But that's okay, because Len McCluskey and the big trade unions, no doubt, will be able to make up most of that. The real problem is they're up to 7 points behind in the opinion polls. They are as hopelessly split on Brexit as a party as the Conservatives are. And I say that because at least a third of their vote is very much the old Labour vote. And, you know, we had Ray on before the break, Stoke-on-Trent, white van, and there he is with his cross of St George on his van, and Emily Thornberry sends out tweets that rather, where she looks down her nose at people like that, they've got a massive problem. Craig says, could never vote Labour again. They lost the election and are 7 points behind, and still they think they are winning. Delusional. Craig, I don't think they do think they're winning. In fact, I've noticed that quite a lot of that confidence that we saw with the Labour Party last year and that sense of buzz and excitement, it's gone. The bubble has very much burst, it seems to me. Omar is calling from Oxford. Good morning, Omar.
Good morning, it's Omar.
Yep. And so what's gone wrong? Because I mean, it all looked so exciting, didn't it? 6 or 9 months ago for Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, I think basically Corbyn, he's relying too heavily on the student vote. Obviously, with their short-term vision and their even short-term plans. Obviously, if you offer them pie in the sky, they're obviously going to vote for it. So I think that's basically, I think he's relying too heavily on the young vote.
Yes, and because the evidence is, I mean, the polling evidence that came out said that actually, despite this buzz that we saw around Corbyn, still a majority of young people did not vote in either the referendum or the general election. So over-reliance on the youth vote may be a problem. But what does he have to do? What does he have to do to reconnect in the Midlands and the North with the old Labour vote?
Well, I wouldn't know. I'm not a Labour voter, but what I think he's just offering pie in the sky sort of figures, everything like that, and it's not going to come true. I mean, if you offer someone something into power, it doesn't work in the long run.
No, and of course somebody else has got to pay for it. So it's all well and good offering money to students, but there are taxpayers got to pay for it. Omar, it's a very good point you make. Over-reliance on youth is Omar's point from Oxford. Difficult, I think, to disagree with that as a point. OK, 2 things about Saturday. Firstly, the tickets were too expensive originally. I wanted to go, but I couldn't afford it. Secondly, it was too local. Should have been a bit more centralised. Well, that means the location was tough to get to. So maybe somewhere in the middle of Birmingham might have been a better place to do it. I don't know. Or maybe somewhere more centrally in London would have been a better place to go for it. Jezza wants to run with the hare and chase with the hounds when it comes to Brexit, and Labour are losing Brexit voters and Remainers because of this. Mark says that to me on Twitter. And Mark, you may be right. You know, maybe this indecision means they're actually not appealing to people from either side of that great political divide, which, hey, makes life pretty difficult. James is calling from Haringey. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Nigel. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. So they've got a few problems, haven't they?
Quite a few, I would say. And yesterday, David Lammy and a Labour Party staff member kind of exemplified perfectly what free speech would look like under a Corbyn government. You've probably seen the footage. A Sun reporter asked him if the low turnout might be attributable to the anti-Semitism problem.
I tell you what, James. Should we just listen to a little bit of David Lammy and a Sun reporter?
Do you think, in part, the slow ticket sales could be due to the problem with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party?
Oh, that was a very, 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 very brutal, mean thing to do. That was not the basis on which you had the interview.
Sorry.
At all. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Sorry, what's happened?
It's just incredible.
It's a question, David.
Sorry, what was the question?
Well, that was the question, James, that was... It wasn't actually, I have to say, it wasn't asked in a rude way, was it?
No. But, of course, awkward questions cannot be allowed under Corbynism. It was a perfectly legitimate question. All he had to say was, he could have said, no, it's got nothing to do with that, or no, we're taking action. But instead, he grabbed the mic and said that was a very mean, brutal thing to do. And the aide came up, and then the rest of the video clip, it shows her trying to cover the lens. No, I mean, like you said, this is the cult of Corbynism. It's all about the Messiah. It's all about do not ask difficult questions, do not talk about anti-Semitism, of which they have an epidemic, and they've done nothing about, absolutely nothing.
We see, James, this is interesting. I mean, I've raised already, during the course of this debate, 3 times I've asked, the callers, is anti-Semitism, or is the row around anti-Semitism, is that part of what is causing Labour a problem? Because respectable people say, hey, do you know what? This has become too extreme.
For respectable people, yes. Sadly, I think a lot of the popularity around him is by people who are actually completely on board with it. I think he's won over people who are anti-Semites, who do love his friendship, his lifelong political friendship with terrorists, his association with the IRA, Hamas, Hezbollah. So I think a lot of people who are on his side, actually, they warm to him because of that. But yes, I think a lot of ordinary people, a lot of decent, ordinary, moderate Labour supporters are repulsed by it.
There was a theory put about, and LBC's Theo Usherwood was talking about this a couple of weeks ago, that the anti-Semitism row wasn't necessarily hurting Labour's vote in London, but it's outside of London that I think... I mean, isn't it true, James, that the British public, the great British public, actually, when they see extremism, run away from it?
Absolutely. And this country, traditionally, is not socialist, it's not communist. And if I can just touch on the point about the idea of Theresa May calling a snap election, I think she'd have to be certifiable. She is electorally toxic. I think, if she was to call an election, they may be Labour may be 7 points behind now. Well, they were 7 points behind before she called last year's election.
It was 20 last time, wasn't it?
Yeah, and she ran an appalling campaign, and they got within reaching distance of Downing Street, which is, to me, is too horrifying to contemplate. Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister would just be hell on earth.
But the point is, James, if May gets into a bind on Brexit such that she cannot get to a point with the House of Commons where the Commons doesn't have a veto over the final deal or no deal, when that could happen as late as February 2019, then isn't she in a terrible position where she effectively has to either call a second referendum or another general election?
No, I think she needs to show leadership, which I think is tough for her because she's so incompetent. But I don't think... Well, we certainly don't need a second referendum. I know the likes of Gina Miller would love one. We don't need an election either because I think that's too terrifying to put a prospect of Jeremy Corbyn winning. It may not look like it right now, but you never know. I think she should just try and show some leadership and carry through the wishes of the people.
Well, yeah, OK. Is she capable of leadership, James?
No. Sadly not. But we are where we are. What choice do we have? I mean, eventually, obviously, she'll have to be replaced as leader because she's terrible. But until then, what can we do? I mean, and Labour itself, as you've said, have got their problems. Corbyn the party and Corbyn have got like 6 positions.
James, there are not many Labour Eurosceptics in the House of Commons. We can kind of name them, can't we? It's Kate Hoey, it's Frank Field, it's John Mann, it's Graham Stringer, it's Kelvin Hopkins, and after that I'm struggling. And of course Corbyn himself, and McDonnell, really, himself. But their problem with the European issue, it's not the parliamentary party, it's not the membership, it's the voters. It's at least a third of the voters who feel very, very strongly, and particularly, James, about open-door immigration. And I think they've got a real problem for the future. Thank you, James, for your call. I've got time for one last quick phone call. James in Barnes is calling. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I just wanted to say very briefly, as a Jew who is a secular Jew, Labour supporting, Guardian reading,
yes,
I would never vote for Jeremy Corbyn, and I'm a secular Jew, if he was the last man standing, sir. As much as I dislike Theresa May, I wouldn't vote for him. Never, never, never. And I know a lot of people who are like-minded like me would never do so until they replace him with a sensible leader, like a David Miliband. And that will be
so for you, James, you, the anti-Semitism is all too real, yeah?
That's 100%, Nigel. And I think that as much as people I know cannot stand Theresa May, would never vote for him. And that's how in the last local election, I couldn't vote for the Labour Party.
James, I have to say, I think this anti-Semitism row has done Labour more harm than they realise. They may not be feeling it in London, but out there in the country, I think it is doing them harm. The British people do not like anything that is tinged with extremism. James, I thank you for your call. Well, there we are. A Labour-supporting secular Jew who is not going to vote Labour. All the while Jeremy Corbyn is around. And I don't think this just applies to Jewish people. It goes far more broadly than that. So we've been talking about the Jez Fest. And my final message on this is Nigel, Jez Fest. In case you forgot, the World Cup was on yesterday. Well, if that's an excuse for them not selling more tickets and for more beer, England weren't even playing. But they are tomorrow. We've all got our fingers crossed. We'll need more than that, probably. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening at 7. At 3 this afternoon, it's Andrew Castle. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, children hooked on video games will be able to seek NHS treatment after gaming is to be classified as a medical disorder by the World Health Organization. Is gaming addiction a thing? Before that, one of the first firefighters to enter